And then seen here, these are all the kind of booklets each year that are produced. So you can look back if you want to get more access to some of the work from previous years and look at some of these booklets that were produced over the years. And just a bit of data. So the Bartlett School of Architecture is global #1 in QS rating in 2023. As far as I'm aware, I think it's over the past 4 or 5 years, it's maintained this. The Bartlett School of Architecture is #1 in the AJ 100th in 2020. And UCL ranked 2nd in London, 4th in the UK, and 9th in the world in 2024. This is kind of an overview, sort of short list of many of the teachers and researchers that are involved in these programs. A number of kind of very high profile individuals from around the world who come together to teach these programs. And maybe Philippe, if you want to jump in and present a bit about the AC program.
Yes, of course. Thanks a lot, Tyson. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. So I will present very briefly what architectural computation is about. As its name indicates, architectural computation is really focused on, let's say, any kind of things, novel things and interesting things we can do with a computer in the discipline of architecture. So architectural computation is mostly focused on architectural design and urban design. But in fact, as you will see, it's not that much, let's say, design oriented. So maybe we can move to the next slides. You will find additional information on the Bartlett website about architectural computation. Next. So the course structure is slightly different from the course structure of the two other programs that will be presented today. It's organized, as you can see, around, let's say, three or four domains. So the first one is a series of, let's say, theoretical classes, theoretical lessons about the philosophy of technology, the influence and the importance of computational knowledge in architecture, but also broadly in many different disciplines today. This is called design as a knowledge-based process. It's in term 1. In term 1, there's also a class called computational analysis, which is dedicated to the understanding and the analysis of the most fundamental aspect of computation. So it's a bit like a kind of theoretical computation class, let's say. In the second term, this class is comes with a complement, which is called computational synthesis, which is where students see how we can, let's say, apply all the tools they have discovered and learned in term 1. There's two very important classes as well that are called morphogenetic programming and introduction to programming for architecture and design. Here in these classes, students really learn, let's say, the know-how, also a bit of theory, but mostly the know-how about how to program, basically. So they learn programming language like C# or Python, and also some fundamental knowledge behind this, what it means, for example, to write an algorithm, to use conditionals, to use loops, to use different kinds of conditions for interruption, etc., etc. There's also a couple of digital studio and digital ecologies, even if it has the name digital ecologies, it is in fact a design studio. The design studio are very specific in AC because they are very much about, let's say, trying to find a use case for the application of computational knowledge in the discipline of architecture. So the design is not so much important. What is important is the method and the applicability of computational techniques. So, and there's also 3 super important modules: computational research project, adaptive architectural computation extended dissertation, And finally, the built environment dissertation, which make this program super specific. It's an MSc, it's a Master of Science. And because of that, the student have to write a full thesis. And this thesis, as you will see, is, I mean, according to me, let's say, the cherry on the cake at the end of the year. This is really what the students mostly focus on. So next slide. As you can see here in this very brief view of the schedule, of the yearly schedule, the program is quite intense, especially during term 1 and term 2 at the top. But at the bottom, as you can see in purple, the students mostly focus on their thesis because there's not so much studio or things like that. So studio and most classes are term 1 and term 2, and term 3 and summer term are dedicated to the thesis. Next. You see here a closer view of what happened in term 1, for example. So you can see that more or less every day you have classes every week. It's a mix between workshops, lectures, tutorials, studio, and sessions dedicated to research projects. So it's a very integral and complete educational program. Which is intense, but at some point, I think it's okay. It works well. Next. Here you see a couple of examples of the work of the student in the design studio. So as you can see, it's very diverse. It's due to the fact that, as I explained before, the design studio in architectural computation in AC are slightly different from what happens in UD or AD. They are more research-driven, let's say. Not saying that the other studios are not research-driven. Obviously, AC and AD, sorry, and UD are also research-driven. But I mean, it's less a design research and more about computational research. Next. So you can see also a couple of other application of the use of computational tools in architecture. And as you can clearly see here, even if it's a very short presentation, it's not so much about the design, but it's really about the applicability of computational tools to the discipline of architecture. Next. You see here also some other projects. Again, next. Here, it's a project about the use of augmented reality tools. Here, it's a project about the use of artificial intelligence technique in the generation of three-dimensional geometries in architecture. Next. Here, as you can see, we also pay a lot of attention in AC to the fabrication of prototypes. So it's really a mix between the abstract computational techniques and let's say a very large set of small machines, extensions of the human body, different kinds of apparatus and artifacts that the student can control thanks to the computational knowledge they will learn. Next. You can see here an example. At the bottom, it's also about comparing the virtual simulation and the physical simulation. So what you see at the bottom has been entirely simulated in a computer, making use of physics engine and physics-based simulation. Next. As you can see, 3D printing is also becoming a very important part of architectural computation programs. So let's say more and more we focus on artificial intelligence and 3D printing, because we believe that these are really the most fundamental evolutions in contemporary architecture. So this is really something we will even emphasize in the next years. Next. You can clearly see here a few examples. Next. And as I said, artificial intelligence is now a key technique. We have probably one of the most ambitious program for artificial intelligence, where we try to bring the students not only the theoretical knowledge, but also a complete understanding of the birth and the evolution of artificial intelligence as a whole. I mean, as a very important part of Western science. Not just Western, by the way, but global science, because now it's just like everywhere. So here it's a couple of examples of image analysis and automatic generations of facade, trying to pay attention to the tiny details, the depth of the facade, as it can be applied in restorations or historical buildings, for example. So it's not just about contemporary architecture, it can also be applied to the past, in fact, to anything that can benefit from the use of computational techniques, and more specifically the one associated with artificial intelligence, including machine learning and, of course, deep learning as well. Next. The thesis, as I said before, are kind of specific. You see an example of a thesis. So it's a science, it's really a Master of Science thesis. It has a title, it has a research question, it has a literature review, a research methodology, a research experiment, some discussion of the result, and conclusion and bibliography. Next. You see the theses are usually between like 25 and 45 pages. So it's a mix between a piece of computational experiment, writing, analysis, and it's also about making use of images, diagrams, and discussing all this material. Next. You can clearly see what the theses are about when you see this image. Next. And you see, as I said before, the bibliography and the list of figures. Next. In this thesis. So basically, this Master of Science thesis is really, as I said before, the cherry on the cake, and it's really the main synthetical work of the student, because they really put all of their knowledge into the writing of this thesis, which is to be submitted in early September. You see a couple of thesis titles here, which show you the diversity. You see that it's about architecture, but it's also about the analysis of urban pattern. It's also about the use of deep learning tools for really abstract problems, as you can see on the top left. So as I said before, AC is kind of specific and very much oriented toward the application of architectural computation tools. Next. So I think now it's about UD or AD, if I'm right.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, I'll just speak very briefly about the AD program as well, and then we'll talk a little bit more broadly about the structure of the course and events throughout the year. So the AD program is focused largely, as I said, around exploring design as a form of research. So you become both a researcher and an architect in this course. As a student, you'll be collaborating with some of the world's highest profile researchers using cutting edge technologies to develop new forms of architecture. So we're both interested in developing technology as well as new forms of design and exploring the new roles of architects in our world today. So it's really about a synergy and a kind of feedback loop between how we explore design and how we explore technology and implement technology. So each research cluster, as I mentioned, the course is divided up into a series of research clusters led by specific tutors. Each one has a specific research agenda pioneering new ways of developing advanced technologies in architecture. So we look at things like computational and generative design, advanced fabrication, construction robotics, artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning, augmented reality and virtual reality, and as well as kind of advanced material research. So all of these things kind of come together in different ways within the different research clusters. And early in the year, you'd be presented with sort of the different types of research that each cluster goes into. Very generally, I mean, we'll speak about this again later, but in general, the course is divided into three main parts. There's sort of a design module, which is sort of 66% of your time, so 2/3 of your time. That's essentially your main design research studio throughout the year, which you will work in teams in collaboration with the research tutors. You also have a theory module. So the theory module will culminate in an individual thesis paper at the end of the year of approximately 10,000 words. And then there's a skills module. So the skills module will provide you with very specific and tailored skills around the specific research cluster that you're a part of. So there'll be opportunities to learn computation, game engines, AR and VR techniques, robotics, various different things. Maybe go to the next, Roberto. Just a note, the program actually also publishes a lot of the research that has been developed throughout the years. So just a couple of examples, we've won sort of the best research paper in Acadia multiple times in the past number of years. So that's quite a significant thing out of the kind of 28% of papers that are accepted in the conference, and then to sort of win the whole conference in terms of the best paper. So it's just to say that, you know, we are a design and teaching course, but we're also very focused on developing research, which builds upon each year. Maybe Roberto, you can go to the next. Again, I'll just present very briefly some short videos of some of the work this year of the different research clusters, just to give you a bit of the flavor of what the agendas are about. It does change and adjust every year. So these videos are from the previous year, and also just show a few images of some of the kinds of work that we do. So Roberto, maybe go to next. Just an abstract image of some of the kind of generative design that we work on. So, you know, within the studio, you'll be developing rule-based computation. Not everyone will have to do that. You know, you may find specific people are more focused on computation, while others are more focused on making or more focused on other fabrication techniques, etc. Next. We do, at the end of the year, we'll talk about it a little bit later in the presentation. We have this very large show that we call the Be Pro Show, where all of the programs will be presenting sort of their final research and kind of design developments. So these are just some examples of some of the kinds of outputs of different projects that have been developed in past years. So you can see that there's both a computational, but also kind of material exploration and form-driven exploration here. Next. So you can see things like robotic 3D printing being exhibited here, coming together with computational design and various other algorithms. Next. Also sort of new material endeavors. So for example, this is a material architecture lab, a series of pieces where they really explore new ways of using materials, even sort of normal materials that you would normally use in buildings. Next. Some more of the kind of robotic 3D printing at a very large scale. In many cases, a lot of this research is also kind of spun out into new robotic 3D printing startups around the world. So that's quite interesting. Next. Also interested in sort of the notion of assembly and assemblies of reversible architectures. So here's some examples of kind of robotically assembled furniture and various pieces of architecture. Next. And you can see here a bit of the process. So within the school, we'll talk about it a bit more again, but we have sort of very advanced robotic facilities, which you guys will have access to. Next. Or in this case, we also look at robotic assembly through bespoke distributed robotic systems. So this is kind of the development of robots themselves in parallel with the material systems that they are assembling. Next. And just another example of sort of very large scale products. So these pieces were sort of around 3.5 meters tall, almost kind of pavilion scale, that were developed at the end of the year as a kind of modular design system, and were part of that show at the very end of the year. So I'll just quickly talk about some of the research clusters specifically. So you can go ahead, Roberto. So research cluster 1, in general, this research cluster develops research surrounding topics of territorial scale ecology, climate migration, and autonomous ecologies. So they really look at sort of environmental problems at an ecological scale and start to think of new ways of developing architecture around that. They largely used video game engines, developed video games, generative algorithms, analytics, and machine learning techniques as a sort of ecological approach to architecture, let's say. Next. Research cluster 2 largely explores the design possibilities of lightweight robotic structures at architectural scale. So you're really, in this studio, you're really developing bespoke robotics. And the cluster explores cyber-physical bespoke robotic systems that integrate lightweight elastic material systems. So it gets a lot into the material system development, the robotics themselves, and looking at how these can become intelligent and self-forming, reconfiguring structures with multiple states. They leverage material behaviors, robotics and sensing, robotic control systems, and cyber-physical simulation. Next. Research cluster 3 interrogates the idea of a living architecture. So it's a notion of coupling of living systems together with the continuous reassembly and reformation of architecture. So this research focuses largely on developing autonomously reconfigurable buildings, and it integrates AI-driven generative design platforms, novel robotic material systems, cyber-physical simulation, sensing, and control. So it's quite a number of different aspects of design that come together with looking at new forms of robotics. Next. Research cluster 5 this past year investigated the notion of product architecture. So it's kind of a relationship between the digital and the physical products for spatial applications. So the research cluster targeted the transformation of traditionally service-oriented architectural design in the industry towards developing its own product applications that are scalable and automated. So it looks largely at physical production through robotic 3D printing and other fabrication techniques, while also exploring computational design and AI-driven platforms, which are largely developed through game engines and other softwares. Next. Research cluster 6 is part of the Material Architecture Lab. So Material Architecture Lab looks largely at new material systems. So you really get into almost treating materials as an algorithm in itself. And they've largely explored over the years new forms through material production. They've largely lately been looking at sort of new sustainable approaches. But it's kind of a coming together of kind of form-driven practice, material systems studied deeply through kind of iterative production. So seen here, you see a few kind of the systems from this past year, like lost wax casting in a foundry, where they collaborated with a foundry, and various other techniques. Next. And then RC7 is looking at the kind of intersection of biodigital design and architecture. So they really continue to look at integrating living biological systems and materials into the architecture itself towards creating a more healthy and resilient architecture and city. So the cluster looks at sort of grown composite materials alongside the use of environmentally driven learning models. And this is looking at new forms, new building typologies, as well as developing biofabrication techniques with actual living materials. Next. And then RC8, the main focus is around the notion of a kind of multi-material architecture with wider implications in the use of multi-materials in the building construction industry. So they explore multi-material robotic 3D printing, other techniques of fusing materials such as metal and glass, alongside using generative design models and new forms of simulation. Next. And RC9, Architecture for the Augmented Age. So RC9 this past year explored largely the use of AR and VR, also looking at new explorations of kind of diffusion models and other AI-driven machine learning models. So how we can kind of deal with the kind of integration of the virtual world, kind of the metaverse, alongside the physical production of architecture. So in some of these projects, they create a dialogue of production and assembly in the physical world using augmented reality, while in others they're purely digital. RC10, next, please. And then finally, RC10, constructing the Phygital. So RC10 really looks largely at data-driven platforms, generative design platforms, using kind of game engines to develop them. So here you get a really holistic approach to both designing buildings through kind of generative system, the notion of platform design, as well as then exploring kind of detailed fabrication techniques around modular architectures. Next. Thanks.
Oh, yeah, thanks. Thank you so much, Tyson. So I'll cover in a few slides a little bit what the urban design program is about. I am Roberto Bottazzi. I'm the director of the program, and I've been at the Bartlett for 8 years, and I've been directing this program for the last 4 years. And as the other two programs that you have seen, it's also a program that very much focuses on experiments in design and in the use of computational tools to analyze and generate designs. Obviously, the difference is pretty much the scale, yeah? So whereas, as you have seen, architectural design is much more interested at the scale of the architectural object or material or component, urban design is more about the future of cities, of places of collective encounters, or large infrastructure. So for that reason, the program uses all these computational technologies, from data analysis and the machine learning techniques, AR and VR, or gaming platforms, to think about the future of cities, yeah? Which mainly means to think about how these technologies will integrate in our urban life, how climate change will impact the design and the experience of the city, and how issues of, let's say, different forms of life that have to make up the ecology of the city can interact with one another. So this year we have 5 clusters, right? So just to say that the notion of cluster is something that you decide at the beginning of the year and then somehow are part of in terms of your design development. And our clusters this year concentrate a lot on the use of artificial intelligence. So Julian and Andrew, as well as myself and Tassos, are both running clusters, are all running clusters that deal with the use of AI quite directly and data in a quite direct way. Anna-Rita and Vincent work on the notion of pervasive urbanism, that is an urbanism that can be worn, can be is part of wearable technologies and uses the body as an agent for transforming the experience and use of public spaces. Claudia and Filippo deal with biocomputation, the use of let's say the integration of both natural and artificial forms of intelligence into design cities. And Enriqueta and Zachary Fluke work on the planetary. Yeah, they start from a very large scale analysis of planetary networks and flows to think about how cities may be affected by them. Yeah, I'll give you now a quick glance. So this was this is an image taken from Julian's. In fact, this is not the most recent. This was when Philippe was also involved, but again, working with computational models to generate design configurations for the city. And RC14 is also a cluster, as I said, that deals with machine learning as well. And in this case, you can see a little bit of the process of analysis of the city, correlation of different data sets, from visual to morphological data sets, and then the use of computational tool to start generating programmatic and formal compositions for large parts of the city, dealing with food issues, dealing with issues that are more, let's say, intangible, such as visual connections, acoustic landscapes, as well as the rewilding of cities. So here you see also a little bit a snippet of the various tools to visualize and generate design that the students engage with. So these are, for instance, generated through gaming software. As I said, Claudia and Filippo run RC16 that deals with biocomputation. So in this case, they look at areas that are particularly affected by problems related to climate change and try to think of an integration between the natural material, the natural forms of computation in an area, in this case bamboo, and machine learning as a way to analyze and coordinate the problem. So this is a kind of piece of infrastructure that uses local knowledge of an area in order to reclaim the land and provide also some form I'm sorry, some form of economy for the local population. Yeah, this project, by the way, won the medal for the best project in urban design last year. And Enriqueta and Zach, as I said, look at the planetary. So the planetary this year for them was to look at brands that have a planetary scale. Here we are seeing one of their projects that deals with Tesla, and think of Tesla as not just as a company in itself, but also as a model for fabricating objects and networking them around the world. So starting from raw material to assembly lines. Eventually, the project rethinks that the future of petrol stations in London by rethinking of them as not so much as places where you distribute oil-based energies, but places where you can either recharge or take advantage of non-oil-based energies such as wind and solar. So the project is here. You see one iteration of the project, but it's supposed to have multiple iterations throughout London and form this sort of little counter network that provides local communities with programs and local energies to be used. So this is in a way just a very short overview of what the projects are about. Now we go into things that all the three of us, Philippe, Tyson, and myself, have already a little bit anticipated, but we want to be a bit more explanatory in our presentation and also give you a little bit of a flavor of how the Life in BPro, whichever of these three programs you want to be part of, Life in BPro will look like. Yeah, so I think that Tyson has already mentioned the fact that the research generated within the program eventually also goes outside the program. So here you have some of the institutions that exhibited work that has been generated by students in the program. And of course, they are quite well-known institutions, both locally in the UK, such as Zaha Hadid Gallery or the V&A, or internationally with MoMA or Centre Pompidou. The Acadia conference has also been nominated, where the program, the whole of BPro, won the award of academic excellence some 5 years ago, which is still, of course, something we are very, very proud of. But also the world of webzines and websites has also been particularly fruitful outlet for the work. So the work has been published in several of the web platforms we are all familiar with, and then this one was quite interesting because it ranked the Bartlett 33rd in the hot list, ahead of Frank Gehry or Chanel or Toyo Ito, which again was quite a remarkable result. I was saying a little bit about the life of the program. So beside the research that you are going to undertake in the program, either in groups, as it happens in UD or in UD, or individually, there are several moments in which you will interface with either the rest of the Bartlett community or outside guests that come in. So the review and the external exams are such moments where we have an international audience of guests that come from either practice or other academic institutions to discuss the work and criticize it and provide feedback for you and the program. We also have reviews which take place regularly, in fact, twice every term. We have a midterm and an end of term review where students present their work in front of colleagues and staff from the school, as well as, of course, guests as well. So these are, of course, very important moments, not only for your development, but also for exposing your work to a wider audience. And finally, I think there'll be more slides on this, but when all these presentations somehow culminate with an event which we call the Super Crit that takes place in late June every year, in which we make a kind of 3 days of back-to-back presentations where everybody presents their work in front of a large audience of national and international guests. The Super Crit has been an extremely successful format that we've been running since 2019. And of course, part of the learning experience are also field trips. So every single cluster you will join will have their own dedicated field trip, which will be, of course, decided based on the thematic interest of the cluster and what the cluster is researching. But the field trip is, of course, a great opportunity to familiarize with different contexts, different institutions, the network that is part of the project of the program, but also a great kind of learning experience for you to be part of. The staff himself is also very active in publishing research that they either generated within the program or is part of their personal research. Here we have a number of books that or magazine that have been edited or authored by members of staff. Just to mention, of course, simply because we are in the call, Philippe has recently published Disruptive Technology, the Convergence of New Paradigms in Architecture. And I was the author of Digital Architecture Beyond Computers some years ago. The part of the offer that you will receive as either member of any of these 3 programs will include lectures. So we have lecture series like the Perspective lecture series that is more tailored towards the historical and theoretical aspects of the topics that are part of the program. We have Plexus, which it ran for a number of years, and we are hoping to bring back, which was a lecture series much more dedicated to design outcome. And we have the Bartlett Super Crit, which I will speak about in a second. So these are some of the snippets from these different lecture series and of the various social media platforms in which the program features, which I invite you to go to consult either on Facebook or on Instagram. These are the 2 perhaps most active. Instagram is actually the most active one. And most of the time, the research cluster themselves may have their own individual Instagram page. So the Super Crit, as I said, is one of the biggest events we have. Towards the end of the year, every single student or group presents their work, and it does so in front of an international audience of very, very highly estimated colleagues that join us from all over the world. Just to say one perhaps piece of information about the Supercrit in 2020, when the Supercrit had to be online due to the lockdown, the 3 days of presentation were watched by over 12,000 people worldwide. Yeah, so it is a great moment for you to show off basically what you have learned in the program. So these are some of the images from those events and the show. Again, it's something that was mentioned already. So I think that perhaps the best thing we can do is just to watch a little video prepared by the communication team on the BPRO show that has recently, about a month and a half, 2 months ago, finished. This is, I'll go back to the catalog. So every show has a catalog, as a book basically that comes out of it and summarizes some of the work that has been produced. Or it's only some, the book is quite thick, but it's still a very, very small fraction of what everybody produces in 12 months, which is amazing in terms of quality and quantity.
It's amazing, honestly. I've seen all these projects transforming, and I've seen the brainstorming that has gone into it, and it's so special to see them actually in real life.
It's magical. I remember last year, first time I come here for the autumn show, and today it's my own project.
Looking at everybody's finished work is so incredible because you get to see people coming from different areas around the globe. And Bartlett is known for being one of the global universities, so the ideas are coming from all over the different places.
So what I find most satisfying in the creative process is the project's flexibility to embrace change and its ability to stay open-ended.
I think what I found rewarding is we've gone through it as a group, and I think these moments will really stay with me.
I have learned a lot after coming from the Bartlett, working with different teammates from different backgrounds, different nationalities, and putting all the ideas together.
Lots of experiences, we learned lots of things we didn't even imagine. It was great.
I would see it as a big confetti moment at the end of the year, seeing all these projects and a year full of hard work, really finalizing in a big and beautiful show.
Great. So this is actually an image, actually a video taken during the award ceremony. So this is the opening night of the show, when everybody comes together, and some awards are also shared to all the students. I will actually encourage you to see the online version of the show, which is still available, and previous years are still available online. So you can get quite a good overview of the different types of projects and media and themes that are developed within the program. Now, perhaps to wrap up this, and I would also urge you to keep adding any question you have to the chat, which we will address as soon as this presentation is drawn to an end. But in terms of the pedagogy, the mechanics of the programs, UD and AD are very much similar in terms of the rhythm of the program and their structure. So we always start with a series of introductory workshops where all the students choose different kinds of workshops where they familiarize themselves with a certain aspect of design or a certain aspect of computation. And that's a nice way to both intellectually but also socially to start with the program and get to know people and see different kinds of approaches. These are some of the outcomes, in fact, of these design workshops that take place at the beginning of the year. It's also part of our mission to treat the three programs that are presented today with some degree of porosity. So exchanges between staff, exchanges between students, or events organized by a single program are often open to students in other programs, and you are more than encouraged to try to make the most of the offer that we can provide. Again, both Philippe and Tyson did speak about the importance of making things, of fabricating things, and that's where BMade comes into the picture. BMade is basically the manufacturing and fabrication workshop of the school. It's situated in the basement in 22 Gordon Street, where we are, but we also have a very large facility in the east of London, where large robotic facilities are available for you to experiment with. So here we go. This is kind of spatially, the school is located in the Bloomsbury campus in the center of London, where the UCL library, perhaps the most iconic building in the UCL campus, is. The school has its brand new building, sorry, that opened 4 years ago, yeah, and also has a very large facility in the east of London called Here East, where other programs are also situated, as well as many other faculties from UCL, such as the engineering school, are also placed. We thrive a lot on studio culture. It was mentioned that the projects are developed in groups throughout the year, so different kind of culture and skill sets come together and collaborate to develop groups, but the physical place, the studio, is a very important component where this kind of creative process emerges. And the studios are, in the studios, actually, every cluster is allocated a certain space. Students have their own dedicated desk they can make use of, and some storage space as well for the production of large objects such as models to be preserved. Again, this was already a little bit introduced. So the program in itself is divided into three parts. As you can see here, the three parts are not necessarily equal in weight. At the top, you have actually the most important part is the design, 120 credits, which culminates with the portfolios, the videos, the physical models that you have been seeing throughout this presentation. Every research cluster has also a dedicated series of workshops that will help you to familiarize yourself with the tools that are necessary to develop ideas in that particular cluster, and that is what we call digital skills, and it's worth 15 credits. And parallel to the design studio, we also have history and theory modules that will allow you to focus on the historical and theoretical implications of the research that you are undertaking. So through the literature review, which is a short exercise that takes place more or less at this very moment in the year, between now and Christmas, more or less, is worth 15 credits. And then after you submit the literature review, from February onward, you start working on your design report, which is a piece of writing 5,000 words, minimum 10,000 words, maximum piece of writing that focuses on an aspect of your research and unravels it, opens it up and studies it in depth. So the year plan, which again, it's a little bit indicative here because RC, research cluster, are very important, and every research cluster has the freedom to organize things slightly differently. But nevertheless, you can see here a number of things we saw images of. So for instance, you see the BPRO workshops taking place at the beginning of the first term, and then you can see several lectures taking dotted out, the midterm crit, the end of term crit, and the workshops. Of all these things we've seen images of, but this gives you a little bit an overview of how the term looks like. Obviously, we have 3 terms. The term 1 is basically the term in which you land at the Bartlett, you familiarize yourself with the program, both in terms of its intellectual and its kind of skills demand, but also it's where you begin to pick up these skills and develop them and become more literate and more advanced, so that when you go to term 2, you can begin to move from a position in which you learn the skills to a position where you start to apply them and generate with them. So again, you can see here dotted out with brighter colors, things we have already seen images of, and then you end up with the 3rd term where your design is beginning to be fully developed. It's also beginning to be developed in terms of the outputs, the kind of the large models or large prototypes that you will develop to demonstrate your ideas and thoughts, and has some sort of culmination with the supercrit, after which you can finish your thesis dissertation, that is the report, the written dissertation, and prepare all the documentation for your submission, which normally takes place at the very end of August. And after that, of course, you get ready for the show, to really make a big kind of final party to celebrate your work in the program. Okay, so the frequent, now we kind of covered all the main aspects of the program. We have a little bit of time for a number of questions that normally come up, and then there will be more questions in the chat. Now, I just want to ask Philippe or Tyson if they want me to go on with this, or if they have anything that I have forgotten that maybe they want to add.
No, I think you pretty much covered everything. We already see some questions in the chat, and we are already trying to answer.
Oh, fantastic.
So,
yeah,
but no, I don't have anything to prepare. Maybe the most general question.
Okay.
I would just go through the FAQ real quick, Roberto, because I think some of those are in line with questions in the chat.
Fantastic. That's good. That's good. Also, because I don't see the chat, so I'll go through the questions.
Oh, okay.
So some of the typical questions we get are about the visa regulations. Yeah, so this is a very important one because the UK government changed its regulations for the visa for students, opening up the so-called graduate route. So the graduate route is a particular kind of route that allows you to have an automatic working visa after you completed your master. So after you completed the master with us, you will have 2 years to in which your visa will convert into a working visa, and therefore can work in London in any of the many studios that are in London. So graduate route means after my master, I can stay in London for 2 years and work in London. Can I also work during my studies? The answer is yes, you can. And your type of visa will limit the number of hours you can work to 20 per week. So you can work, but no more than 20 hours a week. There are certain positions as PGTA, I think, that may be available within the school, and or some sort of assistantship that may be available, but no more than 20 hours a week. The software issue. So this is a difficult question, not because simply because the number of software utilized in the 3 programs is very high. Yeah, there are of course similarities, but just the offer, let's say, out there is very, very rich, and therefore many different softwares are used. However, I can say that UCL as a database of free software that you can download for free, of course, once you are a UCL student, and most of the coding languages that also we use to develop things are free, and so are many pieces of software that are utilized. For instance, Houdini comes with a free license for students. I think Blender also does that, and often you can get free licenses as a student, or as in the case of Rhino, you can get a license, a student license at a very low price, yeah, with a huge discount compared to the professional license. But one question on the software, I should say that I want to just stress that the number of software available out there is such that this conversation will have to be developed with the research cluster you will end up signing up. Career prospects and where do alumni end up? Well, our alumni, of course, I go to kind of have different kinds of careers. I would say, roughly speaking, it divides between those that want to go into practice immediately and those that want to remain within academia. So for the ones that want to stay in academia, and often their route is towards another higher degree, such as a PhD. And it's not part of this presentation today, but through Mario Carpo and Frédéric Migarou, we also offer a PhD in digital design theory. But that's one route, and the other route, of course, is the professional one. With the graduate route, we see more and more students wanting to stay in London to work, and sometimes students prefer to go back to their country of origin and set up a practice or work for an office there. I think that we made this slide because this was of course, a tiny fraction of all the different institutions that have received our graduates. So from the world of practice, you have Foster and Partners, Zaha Hadid, or Wilkinson Eyre, and academia as well. Again, some in London, like the Architectural Associations or University of East London, and other more international, such as ETH in Zurich, for instance. But generally speaking, those are the two main avenues that our graduates go to. And sometimes students in my program, tend to end up in the urban design team in a large office, or say end up in offices that may not have a dedicated urban design team, but work more on the computational, the data analytics of the program, of the projects, and design as well. Okay, so at this point, I think we have just a recap. Yeah, these are our email addresses in case you want to get in touch with us. Just remember, and Tom Moll and and Crystal at the bottom are the administrators of the program. So remember one thing, we are responsible for the academic side of the program. So if you have a question that regards the content of the program or the academics, the academic side of it, we are the person to speak to. If you have questions about admissions, finance, visa regulations, then we are really not the people that look after this part of the admission process. So in that case, Tom Moll and Crystal are better suited for your questions. Okay, so again, I'll ask you for Tyson and Philippe for a little bit of help, because I see 39 questions in the chat. Do you want me to stop sharing the screen and look at the chat, or?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, we've answered a number of the questions in the chat.
Yes.
Via the chat. I'm trying to run through it, but maybe we try to answer any of the ones that we haven't yet answered. And also, if anyone feels, comfortable, you're welcome to also just turn on your mic and your camera and ask a question verbally. We can answer that way as well.
Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, Roberto. I believe there's also a kind of frequently asked question in the chat, which is about, do the student have to know programming before joining? No, of course, no. The principle is that when you join the Bartlett, you will get to learn how to program computers. And obviously, I mean, programming is so wide and so important. It might ask like 5 years in a computer science department at the university to become a real professional computer scientist and programmer. But at some point, most architectural offices, that's not what they are looking for. I mean, they want students who are just like first super curious, but also capable of creating a link between programming and the discipline of architecture. And this is precisely what we focus on in the different programs that we presented today.
Yeah, that's a very good point, Philippe. Yeah, it's all provided by the structure of the course. Yeah, what you need to learn, it is provided by the structure of the course, I think. There's one actually here that is about UD. I can pick it up quickly because this is also a frequently asked question for UD. What is the difference between UD and a planning course? Yeah, and the difference is the design. The UD is a course that concentrates on creativity and design and try to come up with new configurations of the city. So it's less about the diagnostic in itself or the analytical tools to analyze city, or less about the sociological dimension, but it's more about design. That is, how do these things come together to create a new proposition, a new proposal.
Maybe I'll add to that. So there was also a question about sort of the difference between AC and AD. So maybe from the AD side, I would say there's quite a broad endeavor and possibility of endeavor in the program in terms of, you can go actually quite deep in terms of developing new computational models. You can go very far in terms of developing new material systems. You can go very far in terms of looking at robotics. And we really encourage this kind of very research-focused approach. That said, we also we look at contextualizing that research, and we look at how that research is applied in potential architectural scenarios, such as sort of the housing problem, for example. How would a particular technology or development of research be applied to the housing problem? So I think that notion of application and also design in general, so really having a critical view on the very current or near future scope of design and of architecture is all within the kind of purview of what the AD program is about. But very much you'll be developing in teams a kind of multifaceted approach using technology research, looking at design research, seeing how they influence each other. And then perhaps, I mean, Philippe, you could speak more about AC. I think AC is a little bit more technically focused in terms of development of computation and software. But yeah, you would be best to answer that one. You're muted.
Yeah,
There you go.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Tyson. Yeah, in AC, as I also indicated in the chat, the most important part of the work is not a design project. It's a thesis whose name is Built Environment Dissertation. And it's a 10,000 word thesis. And it's really, it's much closer to a piece of scientific writing a science paper or a technology paper. It's much closer to that than to traditional design project. So I would really say that probably the main difference between AC and UD and AD is the fact that AC is less design oriented. But for many other things, I have to say that I mean, all students end up being really skilled in the way they use computers, in the way they program, in the way they might use robots, 3D printing techniques, augmented reality or virtual reality. All of that is part of the agenda. And obviously, this also depends on what the student wants to investigate most. So some students really focus on VR, for example, while some other students just prefer robotics. But some students might be interested in merging both robotic and virtual reality, for example. So, I mean, again, the students have a lot of freedom in the way they deal with the agenda. But ultimately, in any case, they more or less discover everything, and then they focus mostly on one specific tool so that they really become experts in that. Oh, Tyson, we don't hear you.
Oh, excellent. Thank you. I was just addressing, there's a question in the chat that says, do people with a 5-year degree in architecture, a BArch, typically apply to the AD program that we discussed today, or the architecture MArch? I guess that's the diploma part 2 program in the school. And what's the main difference between them? It's hard for me to speak really specifically about diploma, but I would say that the part 2 program is more of an individual project, as far as I'm aware. It's a much more kind of traditional, multifaceted traditionalist architecture. I mean, it's also, technology driven in many ways, and open to that, but it's more of an individual, typical architecture degree, in which you would be going for kind of part 2. And the other program, which I'm directing, is much more research focused, much more kind of cutting edge technology focused. It's more specific in some sense in terms of the types of work that we do. I would say that a person with a BArch degree is very well oriented towards going into the AD course, but it really depends on your focus and your interest.
Yeah, I think
so I can say for example, when I originally came to the UK, I studied in a very similar program to this one, and I came with a BArch degree from the United States, a 5-year degree, and then I did my kind of my MArch, straight away afterward, after a few years off of working. Sorry, go ahead, Mario.
Yeah,
Roberto.
On the part 2 program is an accredited program, so it means that once it follows the professional route, and therefore if you want to become a member of the RIBA, the Royal Institute of British Architects, that is the degree you have to take, because that is the degree they recognize. The master degree you get through either of these three programs is not recognized by RIBA. Therefore, it therefore is not the one you need to take if you want to become a practicing, like a fully fledged practicing architect in London. Yeah, because I mean, not that many do anyway, but that's not the route. But the counterpoint is what Tyson just mentioned. Yeah, in returns you get to be much more free, much more experimental, much more advanced in terms of your level of knowledge. It's the same for UD, by the way. Yeah, AD, UD are both not accredited programs. There was also a question earlier, which I think is useful to pick up. What is your experience with the students that do not come from architecture, but engineering, computer science, or computer vision? Obviously, I'm sure especially Philippe will be absolutely fine with that, because he has already explained that computation is a central column of his program. But in general, I've had an excellent experience, so much so that you should know that at least 2 tutors in the program have exactly that background. Yeah, they are not, let's say, pure urban designers or pure architect, but they have both a computer science and an architecture degree. So it's completely, yeah, my experience has been excellent.
Yeah, maybe just to extend that, I think there's a big part of our general approach to development of research and architecture is multidisciplinary. So within all the different research clusters, you'll see a number of disciplines that start to come into play. So, although many of you are coming with an architecture background, or even maybe, a different type of background, we start to consider architecture a little bit more from a kind of multidisciplinary point of view. So computer science, robotics, biology, various different disciplines come into play. And many of the people that are involved with teaching the program have kind of multiple disciplines in their background.
Could we select the unit we want to be part of? So when you join the program, you go through these workshops I was talking about, after which all the research cluster in that program will present to you. Yeah, that's a big day in which all the different kind of agendas, ideas are shared. And after these presentations, you get to vote which research cluster you want to be part of. And our job is, of course, to try to make sure that everybody gets in the right cluster. But the answer to your question is yes, you do select which research cluster you are part of.
Well, you vote for which research cluster you're part of, and we do our best to align you with your choice, which isn't always your first choice. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not, but usually you'll get close to, one of your top choices.
Yeah. Tyson, is it necessary to have prior knowledge of subjects like machine learning or AI for the AD program?
No, of course not. In general, I mean, it's similar to what was said before. We have a huge range. Many of our students come with very, very little prior knowledge of computation, for example, or of these kinds of topics, but a strong interest in pursuing something along these lines. So I think if you come with a strong interest, having prior knowledge is not important. If you do have prior knowledge, great, because you can build off of that. But I think, this is an environment where we are expecting to kind of give you guys the opportunity to really explore these new territories. So no, not needed.
Yes, I only want to say the same is for UD, okay? Good. So it doesn't look like we have more questions. No, of course, there's one more message now. It was Hannah. Okay. Yeah. That's it, I think. I don't know if you have any more questions. I think that Anna might have recorded this meeting, so it may be perhaps possible to see it again. I'm tentatively saying this. I'm not 100% sure, but otherwise, I think we look forward to seeing your applications. You should know, perhaps in closing, that okay, it will be on the YouTube channel. It's the message that Anna just shared. It should be noticed that all the three programs receive a significant number of applications. So I would urge you to work on your applications and send it to us as soon as possible, perhaps knowing that, of course, there are different components to it, but your design portfolio will perhaps be the most valuable piece of evidence that you will be submitting, because it's, after all, they're all design programs. So therefore, the ability to show synthetic ability to bring ideas together, to manage different media, these are quite valuable skills that we can get a good sense of through a portfolio. So please beware of all these things. Yeah.
Yes, I want to add that maybe in a scene, the portfolio again might be a bit less important, just because it's not as design oriented as the two other programs in BPro. But still, I mean, it's definitely a plus if you have a good portfolio, obviously.
All right, then. At this point, thank you so much, and yeah, contact by email in case you have more questions. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Great.
Thanks a lot
everybody.
for attending. Bye-bye.
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 See you all soon.